It's a real honor for us here at the Kennedy Center today to be welcoming the Baroness to campus. For those of you who have seen her bio, you know that I could be introducing her in a number of capacities. As a former member of the House of Commons, as a member of the European Parliament, as a current member of the House of Lords. She has a long and distinguished career in politics. Today, more specifically, we welcome her in recognition of the humanitarian work she's involved in. With AMAR in particular, the work they have done, the fantastic work they've done in Iraq, providing medical and educational services for the citizenry there. It's a real honor for us to have her here. Her schedule is quite tight, so I'll keep the introduction short so we can get to hearing from her. So please do join me in welcoming Baroness Nicholson to campus.
Good morning, and thank you all very much. First of all, for the prayer. Thank you so much. Who was it that led us in prayer? Thank you very much indeed. We have common values, and they are expressed in prayer. And thank you all very much indeed for giving me your time and for allowing me to discuss people in trouble with you. I, as you know, am a politician. And like all politicians, I suffer from our classic weakness, which is that we consider that we're allowed to talk about anything, irrespective of whether we know anything about it, for as long as we can possibly persuade even the last person in the hall to stay. And when my father was a prospective member of Parliament, he did have that extraordinary experience that I'm sure has happened to more than one of us, which is that when he was standing for Parliament, he stopped at one particular village to do his speech. And there were only 2 people in the room, and halfway through one left the hall. And at the end, he thanked the one who remained in the hall for staying, to which he said, "Well, I'm the man who's locking it up." So I come from a very, very long line of politicians. We go right back to 1066, and we can trace ourselves back to about 800. That's on my mother's side, which is now Scottish, coming in from France with William the Conqueror, and on my father's side, in politics since about 1620. We can't go any further back than that, because the name Nicholson means son of Nichols, and therefore all you can get beyond that is son of Nichols, son of Nichols, son of Nichols, and there's no distinction. So, as a politician, I was raised and bred to see politics in what is in modern terms a rather unlikely perspective, but to see politics as the finest form of public service and to use politics to help people. And I've always felt that if you can get into the heart of a political system, you are then in the position, if you're very lucky and very clever and very hardworking, to be able to alter things which benefit millions of people. Sometimes in life you can help just one person, but the great strength of politics is if you get it right, and that's rare, it's very difficult to get it right, you can in fact get proper legislation in or get something to happen that will transform the opportunities sometimes for hundreds of millions of people. And that, in a sense, is the true attraction of politics. I know that most of us in politics want to climb the greasy pole. We want to be in power. We want to be authoritative. But inside most politicians, there is a wish to help other people. And I would also tell you a truth, which is that we politicians are all the same. We're a tribe. We're a tribe, we're a global tribe. Millions of weaknesses, millions of problems, and I hope some good. But we share the same perspective. By and large, we're trying to help. And when I was small, I watched my father, my uncles, and others in their work in their constituencies, and I saw what they could do. This was a post-war period, and that's when I got to understand and know the problems of generations of people coming out of trauma. And that has led me to my work in the Gulf, in the Middle East, one of the world's most troubled regions at the moment. And it's also led me to cross many boundaries in terms of understanding other people's cultures, systems, practicalities, and what powers them, which is in many cases in the world, is what their faith is, what their religion is. So through my work in Iraq, for example, 9/10 of my staff are Iraqi, and most Iraqis are Muslims. So we have a mix of Shia Muslims, Sunni Muslims. I have one Sufi colleague who's very, very eminent indeed. As you know, that's the deep philosophical strand of Islam. And also we have some Christians, and we have some staff who don't belong to any faith at all. Our objective is to try to find the common denominator, the core values that we can use to bind us together. And one of those core values is service to others, is trying to perceive the need of the other, is to respect the other, is to give the other the same status at least as ourselves. That's one of the heartland values that most people I work with satisfactorily both share and display and implement. In difficult areas of the world, as I found when I was a child growing up in post-war Britain, there's a huge amount of fear about. Britain wasn't quite the same as Iraq in any shape or form, nor indeed, I don't think, were the other nations in Europe outside the concentration camps subjected to the point I'm about to make, which is that in the regions that I'm working in at the moment, and that includes Central and Eastern Europe, where I'm doing a lot of work with children, in Romania, in Moldova, in areas like that, the common denominator there is much less service, but one of fear. Fear is a very potent human emotion. And unless you've lived under fear, and I haven't lived under fear, I believe it's extremely difficult to understand how strong a motivator fear is. It is almost but not quite true, in my experience of people, that you can make almost anybody do almost anything if you can frighten them out of their wits. Just for survival, people will act in ways that in other circumstances they wouldn't touch. And that is true of modern-day Iraq. It's also true, I think, to a large extent, of modern-day Iran. It's also true of Syria at the moment. It's certainly true in post-Ceausescu Romania, where I'm working. Fear is the huge key common denominator. And fear is powered by pain. And you'll find in these countries, post-dictatorship or current dictatorship, you'll find they all practice torture. And they all practice torture very extensively as a means of controlling the population. If I could suggest to you that Iran, with its Green Revolution, if you recall, 2 years ago, why did that fizzle out? Because of the unbelievable amount of torture that was meted out to those who actually had the nerve to stand up and say something. And I've stood outside the Iranian embassy in London myself and watched the groups of people who were complaining outside the Iranian embassy. Every single face knew they were being photographed and that their families back home would be taken into prison and tortured. You can control populations like that just as, sadly, the Nazi Germany's controlled the Jewish population, or tried to, in Auschwitz and Belsen and Bergen and in the other areas in which those tortures went on. That happens today in modern Russia. It happens today in a number of different countries, and particularly at the moment, it's happening in the regions that I'm working in with my colleagues here in the Middle East. How can we tackle fear? Because fear splinters everything. If you're frightened, you're even frightened of your own family. And family is the heart of society. In the European Convention of Human Rights, which is the constitution of the Council of Europe, of which I'm now a parliamentary member, 47 member states, including Azerbaijan, Armenia, Russia, Turkey, and so on, and the Western European Union, and also in the European Union, which is the richer part of the Council of Europe. The European Convention of Human Rights is our constitutional document drawn up in 1947, 8 and 9, and you will find that a very early clause, right at the very beginning, is the statement the family is the basic unit of society. So what do you do to really try to destroy a society and make them do what you want? You destroy the family. How do you do that? By making each member frightened of the other. That's how you completely disestablish the population and the institutions that create a population. So if you're trying to give people hope, if you're trying to give people strength, if you're trying essentially to look after people, to serve people, the first thing you have to try to do is to help them rebuild that family life and trust in each other. I didn't realize until I was working in Romania for the European Parliament quite how deep communism had gone in its utter determination to destroy the family. It taught me how valuable the family is for nihilistic tyrants to go to those lengths to destroy it. I came across something so extraordinary that you would never find, maybe you wouldn't even imagine. Let me just tell you for 2 minutes about it. When I was working on the horrible issue of institutionalized and trafficked Romanian children. This was in the early 2000s as a member of the European Parliament, when they gave me Romania to look after from the European Parliament. I got Romania by mistake, which shows you that politics is quite a slippery slope to work in. It's very hard to keep your feet at all, keep your place. There was a little meeting in which we were going to be handed out countries to look after. I was Vice Chairman of the Foreign Policy Committee and Common Defence and Security Policy Committee, and it was for the political assistants, and they had to meet, and each had to put their master's wishes forward. I told my political assistant, hugely intelligent young Frenchman, I said, Jérôme, I want China. I've never been to the Far East. Please get me on the Chinese delegation, the delegation which will be visiting China every 6 months or so, and making a relationship with the political people in China. I thought that would be very interesting. When he came out of the meeting about 2 hours later, I said, is that done? No, he said, they've given you Romania. That's politics, you see. I said to Jérôme, but Jérôme, didn't you ask for China? Because he looked a bit guilty. And he shuffled his feet a bit. He said, I haven't told you, Emma, but I've got a girlfriend in Romania, so I thought it better that we went there. So anyway, if he hadn't done that, and he married her, by the way, and they've got a child, very satisfactory, except I never got to China. Therefore, I buckled down to work on Romania. One of the huge monstrosities of Romania was this horde of children shoved into institutions with no reason at all. And I was discussing this with the president, and he said, but it's right for the state to look after its children. I said, it's right for families to look after their children. And we had this big argument. Went away, and somebody very kindly, I asked them to do so, translated the law. And the law turned out to be the 1954 communist law, which nobody in the European Union had noticed. It was so deep. It was a fundamental law, and was just the same, and they weren't proposing to alter it. And the law declared that every single live birth, parental responsibility belonged to the state. That's the way to destroy the family completely. And that's how communism worked. Now, if the family matters as much, it's up to us to get the family back together again. What is key elements for the family? Well, from what I've seen in life, one of the key elements in rebuilding trust is to do things, practical action. And so I formed a small charity called the AMAR Foundation. And the AMAR Foundation has been working for the last 21 years in the Middle East. We sort of began there, really, because of Saddam Hussein. That sort of level of evil is the same as communism. It's an utter destructive force, which if you don't somehow stop it, will sweep across, just as communism did. I do believe strongly that these massive systems, and they do turn out to be political systems, they can be supposed to be religious, but generally speaking, they're all political. Land acquisition, power, control of other people, these are political systems. The objective must be to try to sit down with the people and to try to begin again. So in the AMAR Foundation and in other work, that's exactly what we've been trying to do. In my political work, working in the European Parliament, I had a terrific opportunity to promote democracy and the rule of law and the fundamental freedoms and the European Convention of Human Rights, and which is the Declaration of Human Rights, translated into a European context and written at the same time, the various fundamental freedoms, through monitoring political elections, for example. I've been working in a number of different countries for the European Parliament. I'm now doing the same for the Council of Europe Parliamentary Assembly, and that gives one the opportunity to see at close hand exactly how much democracy means to everybody and whether or not one can get democracy to actually work. In about 10 days' time, there's going to be an election in Iraq, and this is a local election. Very exciting. I've just come back from Iraq, and in a minute Angus is going to show you a few photographs of Iraq. But the excitement of the election in Iraq is its absolute normality. You'd hardly think that in 2003, up on every street in Baghdad, I've just been in Baghdad and wandering around a bit, you will find masses of different political posters, each urging you to vote for this, that, or the other candidate. It's the most normal thing I've seen in Iraq for a very, very long time indeed. It streaks ahead in that of Russia, where when I was last there at an election last year, every evening the government ripped down everyone's election posters. People would try to put them back overnight, but basically it would be the government posters that would go back overnight. It streaks ahead of the election in Moldova, which after all is next door to Romania, and Romania is part of the European Union. You'd think we'd managed to get democracy in there by now, 20 years after the fall of communism. Not at all. Absolutely not. It is streaks ahead, curiously enough, in Iraq. Our work there, collective work there, I talk now about the USA and the UK, has been profoundly important, highly valued by the population. Don't believe what all these media writers say who never go there. It is the people of Iraq themselves who are so grateful for democracy, the fundamental freedoms, and the rule of law. I would suggest that this is such a potent mixture that they don't yet feel completely confident to handle it. Indeed, watching what is happening in Iraq at the very top, because I know the politicians, it's almost as if they're trying to wrestle with a whole basket full of black mambas and spitting cobras and a number of other very, very poisonous pythons and whatever. It's as if they're trying to wrestle with all of that. I don't know if you know your Greek myths, but Laocoon, who was wrestling with the serpents, that's exactly what it reminds me of. But the fact of the matter is that unlike Saudi Arabia next door, there is recognizable democracy in Iraq. And all of those posters fluttering in the wind, some of them very cheap, some of them more expensive, somebody hasn't got any money, men and women alike, and some of the women in the posters with no veils, that is democracy. Democracy in action. In the AMAR Foundation, we're completely non-political. Politics doesn't help on health and education, except in getting the better political decisions to get the government to put the right amount of energy and funding and thought and policies behind the healthcare that people want. We in AMAR, we're a very small charity, and we work mightily like a rather old-fashioned charity, or almost no money at all. But we do occasionally have very good parties. And we have a rather special patron who is Prince Charles. And I just would like to show you, every 5 years, Prince Charles comes and meets us and encourages us and tells us to keep going. Well, we also had one or two special friends at the party we had the other day, and I just thought you might see one or two familiar faces in 2 or 3 of our party photographs. We had our 21st reception and dinner last month There you are, just in front of you here, ex-DOD, very important, former soldier, Mr. Chris Straub on the left there. Other people, this is that's the head of Shell, that's the head of BP. There we are. Who do we have here? We have we have Jim, we have his wife. There we are, these some of our marshland people. Very good. The Sarah Akbar, a very rare lady indeed. She's the only woman in the world leading an oil company, Kuwait Energy. Great lady, a terrific supporter of the AMAR Foundation. That's the head of UNESCO. We're very small. We go to the real experts to learn what to do. UNESCO, as you know, is education, science, and culture. Signing a whole new memorandum of understanding with her. Lovely, lovely lady. That's Dr. Kazem Behbahani, who's one of our trustees. He's the former number 2 of the World Health Organization. We go to the WHO to get all the guidance and training on health and education, on health. That is Dr. Shahwaiz, one of the 3 deputy prime ministers of Iraq. He's the one from Kurdish Iraq. Great, great, great man, came over specially to support us. You can see we're in the House of Lords because there's a lot of gold. That's Paul Wolfowitz, who was the person who gave the key introduction to General Chiarelli, which allowed us to work in Baghdad from 2004 onwards. Terrific guy. There we have some of our staff. And there we have one of our new trustees, Missy Cassels. Missy's brother, Dr. Trip Cassels, was Assistant Secretary for Health for the Department of Defense. Great, great, great man, did a huge amount of work in Iraq. He was one of our trustees and died early very recently. We've grabbed his sister, who's a Queen Bee, absolutely fantastic, in the University of Virginia. I'm hoping that, this is Dr. Ali Nazir, who's our country manager, a very, very, very top-class physician. And Dr. Ali ran from Iraq almost as soon as he was qualified, because Saddam Hussein used the medical professionals to carry out the physical torture, which of course they didn't want to do. That's the reason so many Iraqi professionals left Iraq, managed to escape. He joined us in the camps in Iran, and he's never stopped. And he's now our country manager, and he's just starting our program in Yemen. Great man indeed. These are 3 of our women health volunteers, lovely, lovely, lovely ladies. They live and work out of Baghdad, and they're absolutely gorgeous. Brilliant ladies. That is Hans, he's Dutch, he's head of Shell. Great man again. Iraq has all this oil and gas, as you know. It's the second biggest oil and gas place in the globe. And these big companies, they're very sensitive to the local population. So Shell is supporting AMAR with a mobile health centre. It's unbelievably kind in helping us also in local schools. Now, here we have them again. Look. Absolutely. So a lovely, lovely cluster of friends, all from the USA. Now, this is Christopher, who is sitting just there. And Christopher Kiriakou is the Chief Executive Officer, the CEO of AMAR USA, which is based in Washington. That's Sharon Davis, who's also from the University of Virginia. We had some particularly beautiful, wonderful, ancient Arabic manuscripts, both from the British Museum and from one of the world's oldest libraries, which is in Oxford University, called the Bodleian Library. So having a look at those, and that's from the British Museum, which has a mass of antiquities which come from the Babylonian, the Persian Empire, and they brought a few of those along. Prince Charles made a speech. It's a lovely photograph Angus has taken because that's his father behind him. This is the Royal Gallery. If you come and visit me in the House of Lords, and you're all enormously welcome, any time, just let me know. This is the Royal Gallery, which the Queen processes down when she's doing the state opening of Parliament. It's full of her own relations. That's the Royal Gallery. And we had our friends there for our 21st birthday celebration. And then we had a huge dinner around the corner to try to raise some money, because AMAR runs on almost no money at all. It's very hard to make it work. So you can tell that we give a very good party. Now, that doesn't happen very often. It's once every 5 years. And the Prince comes in order to encourage us to do much better. And I'm going to ask Angus now just to show us a tiny little bit on the Syrian world. Maybe, Angus, can you give us Doma's camp? Angus joined us after he left the British Army. He is a parachute regiment veteran. I think he joined up when he was 16, or was it 15? And after a while, the Army recognized his talent, and he became head of photography. So he did the official photographic album, absolutely wonderful, of the 2003 military work in the south. This was a few weeks ago. Both Angus and I went there. We can have a party, but on the other side of the fence, this is why we're doing it. Why do we have the party? To raise the money, to get the encouragement, to help these people. This is a huge camp. It's got 80,000 people in it. Okay. It's massive. I've never seen such a big camp in my life. And there are 500 refugees coming in every day. Over 1 million refugees so far in the surrounding region. This camp is in the north of Iraq on the border with Syria. You can see how difficult it is, how hard the United Nations have worked with all these blue and grey tents, and how devastating it is for the population. Desperately struggling. Some of them have been there for 6 months. Some of them have been there for longer. Some of them arrived the day I was there. More, I'm sure, the day that Angus was there. And that's how they're living. A single tent per family. And some of these families are massive. This one is 20 people in that one tent. That's Dr. Ali on the left. We're wondering what to do to help. We've raised a small sum of money. How can we best use it? I've never seen such a big camp, and I've been to many camps. That's all the sewage running around. Despite everything, it's still there. It's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Angus and I, about 2 weeks ago, we went to see another influx of Syrian refugees into Lebanon. AMAR's been working in Lebanon since 1996. They have a lot of trouble in Lebanon, a lot of problems, as you know. And I'd just like to show, if you can find a couple of photos of that. We've been working there for a long, long time. Any luck? Or? Yeah. Lebanon is a friendly place. They don't have any resources. Lebanon is not wealthy. And UNHCR didn't seem to be anywhere. So we went and visited some of the families that AMAR is helping. AMAR, by the way, stands for the builders. We're trying to rebuild people's lives and futures. You can see how sad these poor children are. They've lost everything. They don't know when they'll go back. The Lebanese are lending them buildings, but you can see how simplistic it is. Lovely families. I'd give anything to have them back home again, but I don't think it's going to happen. Really nice people. You can see. And finally, I'd just like to show you just a few photographs, beginning at the beginning, Angus, I think, just the very beginning of the AMAR work in Iraq. This is the marshes of Iraq, which Saddam almost completely destroyed. This is when he was draining the marshes, the biggest single waterway in the globe. If you take away people's water, and these were agriculture farmers, there used to be about 1 million. They're down to about 300,000. First of all, in massive refugee camps across the border in Iran, where we began working with them in 1991 when they arrived. Huge refugee camps, not as big as the Syrian. We set up schools. We set up a huge amount of literacy, adult literacy. We set up healthcare. In 2003, we managed to get back across the border again. And this is just our work, a little bit about our work in the marshlands, where you can tell how very, very difficult survival is. Intensely rural, without the water, without the fish. Very little water has come back, and the people can't survive. There's about 300,000 of them. Most lovely people. This group of people go right back to about 6,000 BC. They're one of the very original branches of human beings. And you can tell how hard-working they are. So our work with them has been to give them health, to give them education, and to try to see what we could do to help. Thank you. The real, perhaps lasting thought I want to give you is that we live in a situation at the moment where some of us are fortunate enough to have security, both psychological, religious, personal, and family. And a huge number of our fellow citizens have the exact opposite. I found that if we get together, if we share our strengths, if we pool our knowledge, if we get a very clear, simple focus and try to do something quite simple, that even those few simple actions, which seem so little, can have an extraordinary impact. And therefore, I would urge you, if at all possible, to try to think about how you could help, whether you'd like to help with us, whether you'd like to help with other people, whatever it is. But it's not a moment in time where we can afford to sit back and do nothing. It's a moment in time where action is needed by every single one of us. Thank you very much.
We have just a few minutes remaining for questions. If the Baroness would be willing to take a few questions, we'd ask you just to come down here and queue up at this microphone, and you could address your questions to the Baroness.
My name is Ben Martin. I actually lived in London for 2 years, and I'm studying marketing. I'm interested in knowing what projects specifically the AMAR Foundation is working on that accept donations from nonprofits or individuals in the United States.
Can we have 3 questions? Next 2.
Okay.
Then I'll answer them all at once, as we're short of time. How do they differ?
My name is Nathaniel Robinson. A number of us in the audience are healthcare professionals hoping to be so, and we are wondering in what way healthcare professionals, nurses, and physicians may provide support or help in the efforts.
My name's Ethan Kennedy, and my question was to what extent the governments of, my question was to what extent the governments of Lebanon and Iraq are helping you in your humanitarian work with the Syrian refugees.
I have a terrific strength as a politician, which is that I can't hear. I was born 90% deaf because my mother was ill, and so hearing and sight a bit dodgy with me. I can't tell you what a blessing it is as a politician. You can genuinely not hear, which is rather fun. What project are we working on that accept donations? I think you've written, Christopher, from non-profits. All of our projects greatly welcome donations, hugely welcome in any shape or form, however tiny or however massive. What we need to know and understand is what the donor would like us to achieve for that donation. And if we can't use it in the way the donor wants, then obviously we wouldn't take it. It's incredibly important to us, the relationship with the person who gives. The person who gives is just as important as the person who is assisted. So we work hard with donors, large or small, tiny or massive, to make absolutely sure we understand how they would like us to use their precious gift. If it's a government gift, then as a politician, I know this is taxpayers' money, and taxpayers don't generally like giving money to the government. So we try to use it 1,000 times better than any government could do and make it much closer to maybe what the taxpayer might want to give to. If it's a spontaneous donation, then it's even more cherished by us. All of our projects are absolutely open to support in any shape or form. We have a lot of healthcare professionals, you're absolutely right. And healthcare professionals are very, very important. We've managed to get an article in a very important medical journal called The Lancet this month. They've done a whole issue on health in Iraq. I don't agree with all of it. I don't think they've got it quite right because they're not living there. But nonetheless, it's a very good initiative. And we managed to get one article in on the Marsh people. And maybe I could give to your dons, your professors, a copy of that electronically, and then he could very kindly spin it round, and you could actually read it and have a little look. One terrific piece of professional help that is given by yourselves, by the charitable arm of yourselves. And that is twofold gifts. One is physical gifts of little oxygen masks. I didn't have time to show you a photograph of them in action, but there's an awful lot of death on birth in Iraq. It's the general confusion. And a lot of the babies die because they can't breathe. And if you can get its tiny little oxygen mask, which comes from Latter-day Saints charitable help, gifts, they've made a massive difference to saving babies' lives who are born healthy but can't be made to breathe. And our medical professionals have been training hundreds and hundreds of other medical professionals in Iraq on use of these wonderful little things. Another one, which is absolutely terrific, is a form of wheelchair that you've developed here. It's basically rather like a racing wheelchair, very low, and with big wheels that bend sort of inwards. And the big wheels are bicycle wheels. And this wheelchair goes on rough ground. It's absolutely fantastic. And you'll go to repair and make it locally. So we've had thousands of those. That's been absolutely massive. So there's lots of different ways in which help can be given. Funding is critical, otherwise nothing can happen, because we have to find things to happen, but also other gifts are crucial. To what extent does the government of Iraq help? The government of Iraq, I think the government of Iraq probably provides, if I added it up, about 50% of everything. For example, we do a huge amount of medical work, but most of those doctors are also working for the government. And so the government is paying at least 3/4 of their salary. It varies tremendously according to place. I mean, there's one small hospital in the Marshes, for example. We provide one staff member only. That's the critical one, which is the consultant. They couldn't do that. They provide everything else. Somewhere else, we provide 99% of everything, and they do something small. So it varies from place to place. Essentially, the government, by my calculations, it's about 50%. In kind, not in cash, nothing like that, but actually they're probably providing about half. I had a long meeting with the Prime Minister a little while ago, and he has suggested that we should make a big push and get the government to help more. The only problem is that the mindset of a sort of ex-dictatorship doesn't allow for the free market, doesn't allow for civil society, doesn't allow for NGOs. So it's quite a lot of energy in order to help people open their minds. The Prime Minister has a different mindset, and this was his suggestion, but even if he signed a bit of paper, it doesn't happen, because the mindset post-dictatorship, as in post-communist life, it takes a long, long, long time to change. So, a free society doesn't get drawn out of a hat. To create a free society, you have to do a huge amount of work, and that's what we're doing. I know you've got another lecture. Thank you very much.